All right, let's cut that up. Shalom. We're the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, coming out of West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Manning John Yohana. And since 1969, we've been teaching so-called blacks, Hispanics, and the indigenous our true nationality according to the Bible, which is the 12 tribes of Israel, or the Lord's chosen people. And according to these scriptures, it's the only people on the face of this earth that the Lord gives a damn about. And of course, that our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. We're going to be continuing with the Maccabean War, where our forefathers fought violently against the Greeks, you understand, in order to stop the, just crippling oppression it is that we're living under as a nation. So I'm going to be picking up in the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 22. Going to be continuing with Mattathias and his interaction with this heathen, essentially like an ambassador. So, all right. So it's the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 22. We will not hearken to the king's words. And this, of course, is Mattathias telling this spokesman for this heathen king that, he's not going to abandon the ways of our forefathers, that he's not going to follow in Greek customs and all of a sudden be, uncircumcised in the eyes of the Lord. And saying him and his sons won't give in to the money, to the riches, to all these different bribes it is that this, spokesman is trying to push onto Mattathias and his children, his sons. You understand? To go from our religion either on the right hand or the left. And his mighty brothers let him know, there is no way we're going to depart. It don't matter if we get the riches, if we develop more power, if we get more land, if we have to go to war, if we have to go through hell, we're not going to depart from our God. Which, that's the spirit that the ISUPK is putting on blacks, Hispanics, and the indigenous, because for so long, heathens were able to go to our so-called leaders, these false prophets and our weak leaders, and bribe them in order to get them to push, another nation's customs onto us so that our God would forget about us and punish us, which would cause for another nation to come above us. You understand? But as we read, we'll find out just how important it is that we follow the Most High God. Verse 23. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all the sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin. So there was a brother that went into the temple, where we sacrificed. After Mattathias told this heathen off, let him know that we're not going to cave and we're not going to turn our backs on our God. We're going to live our lives as our forefathers did and as the Lord intended for us to do. And of course, there's always one brother or sister that's going to go above and beyond to try to set an example for the whole nation, to let them know it's okay if we do this or if we do that, that even though it's wrong in the eyes of the Lord. But we're going to find out what happens to really those traitors who value themselves and value their lusts more than the word of God. According to the king's commandment. 24. Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal. So Mattathias saw this heathen sacrificing swine, you understand, on the altar. You understand? He got a zeal about him. He got a burst of energy, you could say. You understand? So much so that it just consumed him. And his reins trembled. You understand? And Matthias, he was up on his horse. You understand? Of course, he has his reins in his hands, and he was just so enraged. You understand? He was hit with so much zeal. You ever been so mad that you just shake for pure anger? You'd be so damn mad. That's exactly how Matthias was. That's what the zeal of the Lord can do for you. You understand? So when you see your people in a certain condition, you going, Cap?
Huh?
You gone?
I gotta go get a dog food.
Come. It's lucky. And that's exactly how our people should be when, you understand, we see someone trying to set a bad example, to say the least, for the nation. Like when we see the Cardi B's or the Megan Thee Stallions, Jada Pinkett Smiths, the TD Jakes, all of these different individuals who seek to promote a disgusting lifestyle amongst our people, like we should be angry at that. We shouldn't be trying to, to promote them and say that they're so strong and independent and doing their own thing. Like we should look at them like they are utterly disgusting. And that's exactly how Matthias looked at this brother who thought that he would do according to this heathen king rather than the word of the Lord. And his Slakia. Neither could he forbear to shew his anger according to judgment. You understand? He couldn't hide that anger that he had. You understand? He couldn't just sit there and turn a blind eye as so many Christian pastors do in our communities. You understand? He couldn't turn a blind eye like the Sadducees and Pharisees did during Christ's time. He had to do something about this atrocity that was being committed. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. And so he did as any righteous man would do that follows the Most High God of Israel, that is overcome with the zeal of the Lord. You understand? He ran up there and he slew that brother that decided to follow his own lust rather than following the word of the Lord. You understand? And spiritually, that's what the ISUPK has been doing since 1969. You understand? We've been slaying these Christian pastors. You understand? We've been slaying the Nation of Islam, been slaying the leaders of the conscious community. We've been slaying all of these brothers as well as sisters that would much rather fulfill their own lusts and seek after their own ways rather than following what the Lord intended for us to do as a nation. You understand? Verse 25. Also, the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. And so Matthias also, not only did he kill this brother that decided to do as the commissioner had said, but he also killed the commissioner. He killed this diplomat or spokesman for the heathen king, even with all this power it is that he had and wealth it is that he could offer Matthias. You understand? He sat there and ensured that no more of his people would listen to this heathen, and that no more of his people were influenced by this heathen as well. I'm saying that's why it's so important for our people to get true leaders for our nation. So we've been following false leaders for so long. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Seeing all the crimes it is that they commit, seeing how it is that they spread, this disgusting lifestyle amongst our people with, drug addiction, pedophilia, homosexuality, whoredom. You understand? Not speaking out against brothers and sisters murdering each other.
That's right.
Not speaking out against abortions.
Right.
Like, that's what these leaders do. That's why it's so important that we have true leadership, that the real priests and prophets of the Lord get back in control of our nation. Otherwise, nothing's really going to change for our people. Like, we're going to stay in the same condition. You understand? We're going to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing, just talking about what it is that we need to do and how it is we got to change this and that, how we got to go vote and support different government officials that say they're going to make change, when the government officials are the same as this commissioner for the king. You understand? Like, the governors and the mayors, they work for America. They don't work for us. Verse 26. Oh, Salakia. And the altar he pulled down. He's saying he had to pull down that altar because swine was sacrificed upon it. You understand? The altar is now unclean. 26. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom. You understand? And due to the zeal that Mattathias had, you understand, he ensured that the law, was not done away with, like how Christian pastors would like to say. You understand? He made sure that he did according to what the Lord demanded of us as a people at that time. The same as Phinehas. You understand? So for those of you who don't know, who slew a brother and I think she was a Midianite woman. You understand? The brother tried bringing her amongst the congregation, flaunting this woman like she was something special and seeking to lay with her, knowing that through interracial relationships, the Lord was bringing plagues upon us as a nation. And Phinehas ran both of them through with the spear. You understand? Pierced through the man's back, through his stomach, and into the woman's stomach, killing them both. And that's just that warrior spirit it is that the Lord puts on us as a nation. And that's the spirit that we need to start, getting back as a people, because we became so weak and docile as a nation. It's just like, it's just sad. Like, to see the amount of brothers and sisters that are strung out on drugs, that follow, these different doctrines that make them essentially pacifists, you could say, at least when regarding heathens, but when it comes to their own brother, it's a different ball game. Like, we got to come back to our culture and our customs, our way of life, if we want to ever get out of this condition it is that we've been living in for so long. Verse 27, and Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So Mattathias, he made a decree throughout the city, letting all his brothers know, as well as sisters, so if you're down for the law, if you're down for keeping the covenant, and not only just heathens wish to force their way of life upon us, you understand, follow me. You know what I'm saying? Because this brother, he's about to wage war against the Greeks, against our oppressor, which, that alone, I mean, so many brothers and sisters now would just view that as completely impossible. But the UPK has been doing that since 1969. We've been waging war against America, you understand, against European powers and against African nations and Arabs and Asians. And we've been winning the war. You understand? We've been winning battles, and we haven't lost a single one. Verse 28. So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. So that's self-explanatory. Mattathias' sons went up into the mountains a a strategic stronghold and left everything that they had in the city. You understand? Left, you know, what the hell they had back then? Left horses, gold, silver, their amazing garments it is that they had, their favorite bowl. I can only relate to things nowadays, but they left all of that behind because they knew exactly what was coming after what Mattathias had just done. And they preparing for war up in the mountains. That's why Mattathias made sure any man who believed as he did on the Lord, sure that they need to follow him. They need to go up in the mountains and they need to prepare for war, just as him and his sons are. So, and real quick, that seems like something small, but especially for our people in America, like we're very materialistic. Like, we have a problem with letting go of money. You understand? Cars, game systems, TVs, phones. Forget about shoes. Like brothers just got the jackpot on Jordans and Gucci belts and all this other nonsense. Like, you couldn't force a brother nowadays to leave all that behind in order to prepare to fight for your nation, for the freedom of your people. Like, that's why this school is so important. Because otherwise, we're gonna continue to be exactly how we are, thanks to the Christian preachers who teach our people that you got to worship money in order to have something in this life. He's saying if you don't have nice things, you're nothing. When that's not the case. Not the case at all. Verse 29. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there. Verse 30. Both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increase sore upon them. 31. Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem and the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness. And so the message got to this fort that was built in Jerusalem that we went over in chapter 1, I believe, that these heathens had built in order to slay the Israelites, in order to slay the Jews. Saying the message got to them that there were brothers and sisters who sought to, really follow the laws of God. You understand? Who didn't want to follow the king. Two, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtake them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And eventually the soldiers that was in that fort, they decided to go out and to have battle with the Jews who were in the wilderness that were trying to keep the Lord's laws. You understand? Who were trying to do their own thing away from Mattathias. Verse 33, and they said unto them, let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. Says the heathens trying to give those brothers and sisters a way out, essentially. Telling them, well, the worship that you've done is bad, but just let that be the worst of it. You can always come back to following the king's commandment. You can always come back to following the culture and the customs of the Greeks, which that's the same mentality that brothers and sisters have that leave this truth. They sit there and think, oh, well, the work I've done for the the truth or what they perceive as a truth. They think that that's enough, and they can always just go back into doing their own thing in America's society. When like that's really going to come back at you. You understand? You can't know about the truth and turn your back on it. 34. But they said, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. 35. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. 36. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them. You understand? So even with those brothers and sisters saying that they're not going to profane the Sabbath, you understand, and they're not going to follow the king's commandment, and with the heathens coming to make battle with them, to slay them, their families, you understand, the children, their cattle, to destroy all their possessions, like these brothers and sisters decided not to defend themselves. They decided not to pick up a sword, a rock, or a staff in order to fight off these heathens. And that's primarily why they said that they're not going to profane the Sabbath day. That's just like when Israelite groups say you can't, cook on the Sabbath. You understand? You're not allowed to do anything that is pleasurable. You understand? And it's a very pleasurable thing to defend yourself, to ensure that your wife doesn't get murdered in front of you, to ensure that your children's heads don't get bashed open or cut off by a disgusting heathen. Like that's a pleasurable thing in my eyes, at least. You know what I'm saying? In the eyes of the UPK. That's why we go out to war every single Sabbath. Why it is that we do defend ourselves. And as we'll learn, it's why we'll get to it. Nor stop the places where they lay hidden. And this all goes into that fake Israelite group not defending themselves, because their understanding of the scriptures was it wasn't 100%. You understand? They didn't have the truth. 37. But said, let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. 38. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. And so 1,000 brothers, sisters, and children had to die, all because they was following a false prophet. You understand? Because they was following a weak leader who did not understand these scriptures right here. And that's why it's so important for us to truly get this understanding. Otherwise, we're going to be doing foolish things like not defend ourselves because it's Sabbath. You understand? It's a day of rest, a day where you do what is pleasurable to you. 39. Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. 40. And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. And even then, back then, like those brothers understood that, if they don't defend themselves, if they don't keep that zeal about them and that spirit of warfare, that these heathens are just going to wipe them off. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to murder them, just as they did those 1,000 brothers and sisters. 41. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. And that's so heavy because like this really shows you the true spirit of the Lord. Like Christian pastors will tell you, oh, you gotta forgive your enemies, and saying if they go to strike you, let them just turn the other cheek, kill your enemies with kindness. They tell you all of this nonsense that is just gonna get you murdered, at least when it comes to the heathens. Like when it comes to your brother, you better go out there, get that 40 and show that you are a man. But when it comes to these heathens, you got to kill them with kindness. And that's the same spirit that those 1,000 brothers and sisters had on them, thinking that because they were celebrating the Sabbath, that all of a sudden they'd be spared. But Mattathias and his men knew, hey, if someone comes to murder us, we're going to defend ourselves regardless of what high holy day it is, regardless of whatever feast it is, whatever it is that we're doing in our lives, like we are going to defend ourselves. And that's the spirit of the Lord right there. Like it's not that spirit that the Christian church puts on our people. Verse 42, then came there unto him a company of Assyrians who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. 43. Also, all they that fled for Slakia. Shalom Christ. Shalom Christ. Slakia.
All right. But the brother bringing out was extra heavy about the Maccabees and brothers defending themselves, self-defense. Headpiece. Let's go for a quick second. Because nowadays they trying to make little boys gay. Like if you've seen it, I don't know if you noticed, it's on the internet about little boys playing with kitchen sets. Like for some reason they're trying to say like that's a cool thing, or that's like a new hip thing for little boys to play with kitchen sets. When that's not the spirit of the Lord. That's not the spirit of warfare that we raise our young brothers up and raise our sisters up. Like that's seem like a lot of the sisters want their little boys to be cooking because they ain't cooking. They ain't cooking for the kids. So they like, yeah, it's good, it's great, teach them how to cook. Because they, either a lot of times they're single moms, so they ain't cooking, or they don't got the time, they at the slavery all dang day, or they just don't know how to cook their damn self. So now it's a cool thing to try to get the sons to know how to cook. When you're not raising a warrior, you're raising a servant. Okay, if you raising the next burger flipper or pancake flipper at IHOP. Because that's what he can use them skills for, working at the Outback Steakhouse or something. So we in the UPK, we raising our men to be kings and priests. That's what brothers are taught in here. They're taught to be kings and priests. All right, the sisters taught to be princesses. You know what I mean? Sisters are taught to do the cooking and raise the children and have children. Like that's like part of the woman's life. You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons she is even here. You go in the scriptures, it says, be fruitful and multiply. That's what he told Adam and Eve from the beginning. So that's already supposed to have been getting done. All right. But nowadays they're acting it like that's a sin. To have a child is a sin. Oh, you don't have the money. Oh, you don't have the the time. You don't have the this. You don't have the that. This, all that they talking about. People have children in third world countries. How much money they have? This is supposed to be the richest country in the world. But you can't have enough money to give a baby some crackers and some little apple sauces and stuff, and milk come out your breast. That's free. So what are you talking about? Everything the baby needs already there. It's the milk coming out the breast. So what people got to understand is, what you hearing in this kingdom is not of the Lord. All the different propaganda from this kingdom is not of the Lord. Let's get 1 Timothy. Let's get 1 Timothy 5:14. All right. First Timothy chapter 2, verse 11. Okay. Let's get that scripture. All right. Back on deck. Yeah. Oh, it's here.
Slocky. See if I can find my spot. Okay. Slocky. All right, this is the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 43. Also, all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them and were as a stay unto them. So all the Jews that were fleeing persecution from the Greeks, they joined themselves onto Mattathias alongside the Assyrians. And this is all in the buildup of Mattathias getting his own army, essentially, in order for him to, as our oppressor would call it, revolt against the Greeks. But, and in our eyes, it's him going to war. 44. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. So Mattathias and all these mighty men it is that he gathered in this army that he created, or really that the Lord allowed for him to create. And they went through and they slew those who would much rather follow the heathen rather than following the Lord. And they slew the Christian pastors, the Muslim imams. They slew the African spiritual leaders, all these people that would lead the Israelites astray, lead them down just a disgusting path. It's 45. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars. And Mattathias and his army, it's like that. Were you able to get hold of him? Huh? Were you able to get hold of him?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said he was wild. He said he's on his way here. What happened? Oh, okay, God. Okay, God. All right, come on. Next time, just tell me. You ain't trying. You gonna try to tell me? Oh no.
Yeah. he got it straight real quick. So 46. And what children and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. 47. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. And so they pursued after those that were proud and following the ways of the heathens. You know what I'm saying? Much like Christian pastors, you understand? And who else? The Jakes are proud. What are those like the Jakes in the government that think they're white men in a black man's body. Like those type of men are the proud men that they went after. Verse 48. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles and out of the hand of kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. 49. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. 50. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. You know what I'm saying? He was just making sure that his sons do what he was taught, which is to uphold the law. You know what I'm saying? To fight in order to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments that the Lord gave to us as a nation. And that's something that we should make sure that we pass down to all of our children. You know what I'm saying? I know the Isupk under Commanding General Yohana has ensured that, we raise our children to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, to make sure that our children know what is their way of life, how it is that they're supposed to live their lives, how they're supposed to conduct themselves, what it is that they are and aren't supposed to do, and how to filter out the truth from the lies. 51. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. That's just like what the ISUBK did. What was that, Sunday? You understand? With was that last Sunday? Was that the last Sunday? Last Sunday with the Feast of Dedication. You understand? We remember the acts that the brothers and as well as sisters did in the book of Maccabees. Remember the sacrifice it is that they made in order to live their lives how the Lord told us to. You understand? We remember the hell it is that they had to face in order to keep our culture, in order to ensure that they, kept their integrity until death. And that's exactly how we should be living our lives in this earth, how Blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous should be. We should ensure that we keep our forefathers' cultures and customs and laws before we ever fold and follow in the way of any heathen. But because we've grown up in America under weak leaders and false prophets, like it's just a normal thing to follow another heathen. You got brothers that follow the God of Koreans and Japanese and Chinese. Of course, you got brothers that follow the God of the Arabs, the God of our oppressor, the gods of Africans. Like that's just normal, like the normal way of life. That's just how things are in this kingdom. But that's not how we're supposed to be as a people. You understand? We have one God. You understand? The most high power of Israel. so shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. Verse 52. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? 53. Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. 54. Phinehas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. 55. Jesus, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. 56. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. 57. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. 58. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. And saying this is going to continue running down these great men that put the Lord before themselves. You understand? That made sure that our people followed the Lord and kept our laws about us. Slack.
Any heat coming off that thing?
No.
It's there.
Oh, well, actually,
A little bit.
yeah, very well.
It's not good up here.
Is it cold in there?
I don't think it works too well. I mean, I turned it off and run a couple times earlier.
I don't know, just kidding. Let's see.
So, no.
It's okay. Is that better?
Takes a minute.
We got crying babies and dogs barking.
Where'd you get your roots?
I got these from Shoes in their little shoe shop section. I normally don't shop for shoes there, but like they had a sale, so thank you. Thank you.
I love boots. I'm obsessed with boots.
Me too. Now these are kind of soft, but I have some shoes like those that are like a little harder. I don't know. I don't think I like them as much.
Oh, no, you like the softer?
Yeah, softer. Like, yeah, it's just a little. Yeah, I don't know.
I know what you mean. I can hear the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I love boots as well.
I'm obsessed with boots. I need to start buying regular shoes. Today I was like, I don't want to wear boots, but all I have is boots. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm not talking today because I'm tired.
Slack. Where was I at? All right, this is just running down all these amazing feats. Well, really, the rewards that these amazing brothers got for keeping the laws of the Lord and ensuring that our people did so as well. Verse 58. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. 59. And Ananias, Azarias, and Mizael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. It's like leave that open, folks. The water. Verse 60. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. 61. And thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. 62. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Slightly. I'm gonna reread verse 61. You want to come up here, Paul? I should have known. Before I looked up, it was like 61. And thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Yes, and that's why I went over these brothers and their rewards, because they didn't allow for, you know, their zeal to be you know, destroyed in anything. You understand? Whatever it is that they came up against in their lives, like they made sure that they followed the Lord, that they kept his laws, statutes, and commandments. Right. And that's how we got to be as a people. We got to make sure that no matter what family member comes up against us, you understand, how many ribs a brother might lose, how many arguments a brother got to get in, you know, sisters gotta not worry about if the husband don't like the truth. Like we can't worry about any of that. We got to focus on keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments and being perfect servants of the Lord, right, so that we can get the same reward as these brothers have. Right. 62. Fear not that. First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 62. I think there's it works. What's it? First Maccabees chapter 2, verse 62. So let me know when y'all got it. Oh, Kim got it? Verse 62. Fear not then the words of a sinful man. And that's so heavy, because that's the ISBK every time like we go out to camp. You understand? And we're getting death threats from whether it's a brother or a heathen, like we don't fear those words of these sinful men when they come out and say they're gonna gun us down, say they're gonna be back with some friends, say they're gonna call the cops on us, all these different threats it is that they deliver to us. Like we don't worry about any of that because we know that we have the Lord on our side, just as Mattathias did back then. You think he worried about what it was that ambassador had said to him? You understand how it is that his life was threatened? He didn't care about none of that. What he cared about was pleasing the Lord. He cared about keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments and making sure that our people did so as well. For his glory shall be dung and worms. You understand? That simple man's glory shall be dung and worms. Like he ain't gonna have nothing in this life because he came up against the servants of the Most High God. Like Cap brought it out during the opening feast of the Feast of Dedication of how it is that there were cats that tried jumping him back in the day, like when he was first spreading the truth out in Indianapolis under Command John Yohana, and now the ringleader of the cats that was trying to jump him, he's only got one leg, and he's young. He's like in his mid-20s. You understand? And then he also brought out how there were how one of them just withered away and basically died from like AIDS or something that ate apart his body. And then forget about the Kentucky 8. Like, we've been seeing reports of people involved in that. Like they just been coming up dead, getting arrested, being thrown in prison for, years. Like it's a very dangerous thing to come up against a servant of the Lord, a priest and prophet of the Lord. Go ahead.
And also, I want to scripture. I forgot what scripture was, but you don't want to seek revenge.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give the Lord a chance to deal with your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
We done seen it multiple times, like with the devil that stayed next door
Right.
by the barracks. He was threatening, us. We wasn't no sweating it. As long as he don't come up against us, like we will defend ourselves. But he just talking. But short story short, he was put to death, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Overdose or something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's any enemy that has ever came up against ISUPK. Like either they end up dying, get thrown in prison, or they get exposed to the people to be the false prophets that they are.
Right.
Can you take over reading for him?
Okay. Verse 63. Today he shall be lifted up.
Christian leaders, they're lifted as being, the real priests of the Lord and being these righteous men that every man should be modeled after. They're lifted up now. Go ahead. Oh, it's like reread
63.
Yeah. Well, and tomorrow.
And tomorrow he shall not be found.
You understand? And tomorrow he shall not be found, because these so-called leaders are getting exposed. You understand?
Right.
Them Christian pastors, they won't be found because they've been exposed for being a pedophile.
Right.
They've been exposed as molesting every other child within that church or that congregation, and they get ran off.
Right.
You understand? Your spiritual leaders, your African spiritual leaders get exposed as being pedophiles and have to flee the country and end up molesting brothers and sisters in other countries as well. Like who was that? Was it Nature Boy? The cat that was like up and coming. I think he was like up there with Polite or some nonsense like that. Like he ended up molesting children in America and fled into South America and started molesting our Hispanic brothers and sisters. Like that's just the type of lifestyle that you're going to live when you follow after the heathens.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what heathen nation you follow. It don't matter if you take what you believe is all the good from these different nations, you're always going to end up being just a disgusting bastard in the eyes of the Lord. You're going to end up being a rapist, a pedophile, a drug addict, a drug dealer, a whoremonger, a murderer, a thief, a liar, all of these different things that are frowned upon in Israelite culture. Go ahead.
Okay. Because he is returned into his dust,
Mhm.
and his thoughts is come to nothing.
Mhm.
Verse 64. Wherefore, ye, my sons, be valiant and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law.
And saying, and just like Mattathias was making sure that his sons knew that they got to be men, like they can't fold because they face hardships. Yes, and that's what he's saying um, when he's saying show yourselves men in behalf of the law. Like you can't just fold when times is tough and abandon the law. You can't just all of a sudden start being a drug addict or a drug dealer. You can't all of a sudden just sleep with whores and go out and commit abortions. Like you gotta stand strong.
Right.
And that's exactly what the ISUPK has been teaching brothers since 1969. We've been teaching men and women that no matter what you face, you got to stand strong. You can't buckle, you can't fold, you can't allow for your demons to overcome and defeat you. You got to fight until the end.
Right.
Go ahead.
For by it shall ye obtain glory.
And it's as simple as that. You understand? Through the law, you'll obtain glory. You understand? You'll be remembered through the ages, just as the men that were listed above are remembered.
Right.
Like we remember our forefathers in here and the valiant acts that they've done.
Right.
Like we don't forget none of that, and we don't try to belittle it or bastardize it either. Like we make sure our people know what exactly our forefathers have done. You understand? No matter if it's bad or good.
Right.
You understand? All throughout the scriptures, we learn about all the bad that Israel did by following these false prophets and weak leaders. But yet, at the end of the day, we come back to keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. We come back to following the Lord and keeping our culture.
Right. Verse 60.
It's like you should put that out.
Come on.
The water. Appreciate it.
Come on. Verse 65. And behold, I know that your brother Simeon is a man of counsel. Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him always. He shall be a father unto you.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 66. As for Judas, Maccabees.
And it's like before you continue, like I know that's one thing Officer Isaac always brings out is the heed. Well, really, the school brings out is the heed wise counsel. Like that's why it's so heavy, and why it's so important that Mattathias knew his sons, because he knew who was the one that did wise counsel. He knew who would be the leader, who would be the best fighter and tactician.
Right.
Like he knew all these things, and it's always a blessing from the Lord to have someone you can get wise counsel from. That's why I thank the Lord for the ISUPK, because without the counsel from Captain Kapash, saying Officer Napataza, Officer Tarap, Officer Isa Arya, like it'd be a rough life. You understand? Because without these teachings that these brothers learned from, Command General Yohana, like we'd be truly lost as a people. Like
right.
we would not know how to conduct ourselves or how to handle certain situations. Go ahead.
Okay.
You know, just chime in if you want.
Okay. And so like I say, we was bringing out because Like we always like, the brothers always bring it out. This book, man, can teach you everything, man. You know what I'm saying? This book will bring you life. You know what I'm saying? If you don't keep it, it will bring you death. You know what I'm saying? This is all we need, man. We don't need these heathen nations. You know what I'm saying? This is how you fix blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. We don't need the oppressor to chime in. We don't need these heathen nations. We don't need their culture. All we need to do is keep these laws, statutes, commandments, man. Verse 66. As for Judas, Maccabeus, he had been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battle of the people. Verse 67.
Oh no, like you 12. And this is of course Mattathias letting all his sons know basically who's going to be the general out of all of you, and it's going to be Judas Maccabeus. You understand? Who's just a cold brother. You understand? He was one mighty brother, as we're going to discover throughout these scriptures. And shoot, Lord willing, all the brothers in UPK will be on his level of fighting prowess. Go ahead.
Verse 67. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Verse 68. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law. Verse 70. And he died in the 69. So he blessed them and was gathered to his fathers.
You know what that means, Quan?
Who
knows? And was gathered to his fathers. Who knows what that means?
To his fathers. It's like when he said gathered to his fathers.
It's talking about Mattathias. So it's given this whole rundown, just to brief it up for you. This whole rundown that we were just reading, and him letting his sons know who's going to be the counselor, who's going to be the general, is because he's essentially on his deathbed. He's saying he's about to die. So when it says and was gathered to his fathers, you know what that means?
Like he went, he basically died.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. His fathers are, Christ and the Most High.
Now, his fathers are his literal forefathers.
Okay.
So it's like let's say a brother in the school passes away. He'd be sleeping with our forefathers.
Right.
And he'd be waiting to rise again when Christ returns.
Right.
Let me see if I can find that scripture. You can go ahead and keep reading.
Okay. Verse 70. And he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentations of him.
I said read that. Read 2 Samuel 7:12.
Okay. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12. And when died.
This is book 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers. In a sense, so this is talking about, I think this is Slovakia. So I believe this is talking about David, King David. You know what I'm saying? So this is Samuel letting David know that when he passes away, that he'll be sleeping with his fathers. You know what I'm saying? Because in Israelite culture, it's not like, you die and go to, heaven to live a lavish life with white angels and half-naked babies. It's not like you just die and there's nothing. Like you die and then there's just a point in time where you're sleeping. You're just waiting to be put back into the earth through reincarnation. I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. You understand? It's, I mean, just the beginning of that verse was the main point of it. Like in Israelite culture, it's not just, you know, oh, he's dead and gone. Now he's gonna rise again. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna return with a new body. Verse 70. And he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his fathers at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. So that was then, you know, the leader of really, I'd say the nation, you know, because he was making sure that our people kept the law, statutes, and commandments, was making sure that those who wanted to not follow the heathens, that they'd be able to keep our culture and our customs. You know what I'm saying? Mattathias. So, you know, he just passed, his sons buried him, and now it's about to go into, you know, Judas Maccabeus, who, you know, inherited essentially the throne, or that mantle from his father. So this is the book of First Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 1. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead. And the reason it says Judas called Maccabeus is because, so he'd have, Judas would be whatever his Hebrew name would be, but because this is English, they translated it differently. We'd have to look up the Hebrew translation of Judas. So it'd be his Hebrew name, but he's called Maccabeus because that's like his Greek name. Like in America, like I got my slave name, which I won't tell nobody, and then I got my Hebrew name, which is Madarat. You understand? Kumapar has his slave name, and then he has his Hebrew name, Kwam, so on and so forth. Verse 2. You take a look. 3 and 2.
Verse 2. And all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father.
It's like, read that from the top.
And all his brethren helped him.
You know what I'm saying? And even with Judas Maccabeus being made the leader, you know, like his father said, like he made sure that he utilized his brothers. They made sure that they stayed together, because that's how their father raised them up, to ensure that their family remains strong. And sadly, that's something that our households don't have nowadays. And that's what happens when you grow up under another empire. Like your families get weak and break apart, become fragile, and like it's just not as strong as it should be. That's why this Bible is so important right here, because it shows us how to build strong families. It shows us how it is that we can stay together even through the hardest of times. Go ahead.
Go. And so did all they that held with his father.
Mm-hmm.
And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel.
And all them brothers, like, they had to go through this hell and fight against the heathens, fight against the Greeks. You understand? They didn't do it, you know, complaining, asking why it is that they, you know, couldn't do this and that, why it is that they couldn't, you know, live their best lives out here. Like they gladly fought for our people. And that's what the UPK has been doing since 1969. That's what Commanding General Yohana has been doing since the 80s. Even when the non-believers left the school during the year 2000. Like he didn't sit there and mope around, give up and curl up in the fetal position. Right. You understand? He was teaching classes. He was going out to camp. He was passing out flyers. He was doing everything that he could in order to build this nation back up,
Right.
in order to build this truth back up. And that's that spirit that our people need to have. And it's the only way we can get that spirit is to come into the ISUPK. Go ahead.
Verse 3.
Unless you had something to add.
Verse 3. So he got his people great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant and gird his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword.
Read that from the top.
Verse 3. So he got his people great honor.
You understand? And Judas, he brought honor to our people. He made sure that we were respected by the heathens. Because before, as we read, they just came up into our cities and did as they pleased.
Right.
They built their own forts and put, riches out there in order to trick our people so that they could murder them when we tried getting out of the poverty it is that we were living in. You understand? And that's what Commander General Yohana has done for our people. Like, he's got our people respect. Like, because before, these heathen nations, they didn't used to respect us. You understand? They would see us as nothing more than slaves and did as they pleased.
Right.
You understand? That's why it is that, the Asians were, shooting blacks, Hispanics, and indigenous during the riots. Why it is that they were, shooting little girls in the head. Why it is that Klansmen were lynching, brothers and sisters. Like, why all these different nations took advantage of us and did all these horrible things. It's because they had no respect. Like, we didn't have nobody to protect us. But and then Commander General Yohana hit the scene in the ISUPK, and everything changed. You understand? Now an Asian tries to do something to a brother or sister, they get shut down. You understand? They try to, assault a sister in front of a brother. I would say Lord be with them, but that ain't gonna happen. You understand? Like, we are the last stronghold, the last the hell's that called?
Safe haven.
Yeah, last safe haven for our people. And there's no other group out here, no other organization that can do it like the ISUPK. Go ahead.
And the reason they can do all these things because we don't even have respect for ourselves. We want to gather unto them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We want to beg and plead for our lives, or to beg and plead for them to stop murdering us down in the streets. And that's why they're able to murder us down in the streets on TV, rape us and molest us on the borders, because we want to be unto them. You know what I'm saying? That's why we need to separate from them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because like the scripture said, and it's, I believe First Esdras, I think it's 6:85, but it says, "Seek not to have peace with them, so that you would be strong." You know what I'm saying? And that's what we are in the ISUPK. We are separate. We are strong because we are separate. You know what I'm saying?
And if I could real quick, that's also that honor that the ISUPK brought to our people. Like, because before, sisters were, bleaching their skin real bad and, putting relaxers in their hair, doing, dyeing their hair blonde, doing all these different things, just so they wouldn't have to be a nigga.
Right.
But when the UPK hit the scene, like, I haven't seen, sisters wear their afros out like that since the UPK, touched down. Like, that's when the whole, Afro movement really happened, and sisters and brothers wearing braids and brothers growing out their beards. Like, that's all thanks to the UPK.
Right.
Because otherwise, we'd be looking like Christian pastors. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll say verse 4.
That's verse 3.
And
put on the breastplate.
Okay. And put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles.
You understand? And it says, like it, put on a breastplate as a giant. It's to show you that this brother, he was a mighty man.
Right.
Like, he wasn't 6-story tall, giant like they show in the movies, but he was a mighty man.
Right.
You understand? And it takes a mighty man in order to go to war for your people, in order to go out to battle and to fight and to get wounded and to get bruised up and cut up for your people. Like that's I just can't say it enough. Like I gotta thank the ISUPK under Commanding General Yohana. Like without this organization, our people would be completely lost. Like that spirit of war that Judas Maccabeus had and that Mattathias had, that's the spirit that our people need on us once again. Because like I said, otherwise we'll be like these Christian pastors. You understand? We'll just be soft. We'll be docile. We'll be passive. We'll be pacifists. And, all these different terms for not wanting to defend yourself or fight for your people. And that's exactly what America wants out of our people is weak men. You understand? Weak leadership. Go ahead.
Come. Protecting the host with his sword.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 4.
So I can just take a note of this real quick. So we're gonna wrap it up there. So I'm gonna pass the class over to priest and officer of 500, Kwame. Go ahead and clap that up.
ISUPK security announcements. We are the ISUPK, started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother and sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They have to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6 month period, the sister will permission from the head third. Tithes, which is the commandment. Numbers 18 through 21. Malachi 3 and 8 through 10 means 10th in Hebrew. Maisha, 10% of every penny the Lord of any penny, of any increase the Lord gives you. Get to the treasury department or teacher. Priest funds, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like, upcoming holy convocation.
I'm not sure.
I got it.
Okay.
It's the Feast of Purim, the 14th day and the 15th day of the 12th month. It's Monday, the 14th of February, and Tuesday, the 5th February, 2022. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, to start wearing all black boots, shirts, pants, headbands, scarves. With that, a module, which means to rise. With Pungo Hasidam, he's turning to face the east. The Lord's Prayer in the Hebrew. Abanawu. Shabbat Shemayim. Quadash. Hayah. Shimka. Yahweh. Malakwika. Taba'ah. Ratazayaka. Hayah. Aisha. Baratazah. Kawa. Hayah. Bashamayim. Nathan. Lenawu. Lekam. Call. Yawam. Wasalakanawu. Kawawathanawu. Kasalakanawu. Kawawathanawu. Wala'a. Tabayanawu. Bonasai one. Abal. Awashayanawu. Mayan. Ra. Kayuk. Lekuk. Amalaku. Waha'ala. Wadapara. Lawalamyum. Aman. In the English. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Yahweh. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. In earth. As it is in heaven. Give us this day
Give us this day
our daily bread,
our daily bread,
and forgive us our debts,
and forgive us of our debts,
as we forgive our debtors.
as we forgive our debtors.
And lead us not into temptation,
And lead us not into temptation,
but deliver us from evil.
but deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom,
For thine is the kingdom,
and the power,
and the power,
and the glory,
and the glory,
forever.
forever.
So be it.
So be it.
Hakat, the power, in the Hebrew. Yahweh,
Yahweh,
Ba'ashim Yahushua,
Bahashim Yahushua,
Baba Kashah,
Babakashah,
the Thamanawa,
Nathananawa,
Hakat,
Hakak,
Hakat,
Hakak,
La Rapa'ah,
La Rapa'ah,
Kal Makalah,
Karamakallah,
Kal Madawa,
Wakal
Hakat,
Hakak,
La Tahar,
Latahar,
Hamatazarayim,
Hamatazarayim,
Hakat,
Hakak,
La Hakim,
Lahakim,
Hamathium,
Hamathim,
Hakat,
Hakak,
Arakawat,
Arakawath,
Hatamalu,
Hatama Allah,
Lagarshan,
Lagarshan,
Ba'ashim,
Bahashim,
Yahushua,
Yahushai,
Duwad Aman,
the Wadaman,
in the English. Yahweh,
Yahweh,
in the name of Yahushua,
in the name of Yahushai,
please give us the power
please give us the power
to heal
to heal
all manner of sickness
all manner of sickness
and all manner of disease,
and all manner of disease,
the power to cleanse the leper,
the power to cleanse the leper,
the power to raise the dead,
the power to raise the dead,
the power against unclean spirits,
the power against unclean spirits,
to cast them out.
to cast them out.
In the name of Yahushua,
In the name of Yahushai,
thank you.
thank you.
So be it.
So be it.
The curses. Come. Come. Blessings in the Hebrew. Barakatah Yahweh.
Barakatha Yahweh.
Why Yahweh Shah?
Wa Yahushai.
Wam Yaka'ala.
Wam Yaka'ala.
Wa Lahayim.
Wa Ahayim.
Matazaba'ah.
Matazabiyah.
Halawat Yahana.
Alawap Yahana.
Halawathium.
Ha'alawapyum.
Hazarayim.
Hazaranyum.
Hakwatazayanyum.
Ha'kwatazayanyum.
Hakayanyum.
Ha'kayayayum.
Wahakwathium.
Wa Kwathian.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Ba'ashim.
Bahashim.
Yahweh Shah.
Yahushai.
Duad Aman.
The Wadaman.
In the English. Bless Yahweh.
Bless Yahweh.
Yahweh Shah.
Yahushai.
And Michael.
And Michael.
And the angels.
And the angels.
Commanding General Yahana.
Commanding General Yahana.
The general.
The generals.
The captain.
The captains.
The officer.
The officers.
The troopers.
The troopers.
And the sisters.
And the sisters.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
In the name of Yahweh Shah.
In the name of Yahushai.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So be it.
So be it.
I actually became curses. Blessed are you, Yahweh,
Blessed are you, Yahweh,
King of heaven and earth,
King of heaven and earth,
and all things living.
and all things live.
Yahweh,
Yahweh,
in the name of Yahweh Shah,
in the name of Yahweh,
listen to us now,
listen to us now,
right now.
right now.
Send evils and curses,
Send evils and curses,
and punishment and destruction
and punishment and destruction
to the heathen
to the heathen
that speak against us,
that speak against us,
thy prophets,
thy prophets,
the teachers,
the teachers,
the princes,
the princes,
the priests,
the priests,
the Israelite brothers,
the Israelite brothers,
and the school.
and the school.
Send evils and curses,
Send evils and curses,
and punishment and destruction
and punishment and destruction
to the heathen,
to the heathen.
and shake loose, and shake loose the treasure of the rich of Israel,
And shake loose the treasure of the rich of Israel.
that refuse to give to the school,
They refuse to give to the school,
force their riches,
force their riches,
to enter in thy sanctuary.
to enter into thy sanctuary.
Send evils and curses,
Send evils and curses,
and punishment and destruction
and punishment and destruction
to the Edomites,
to the Edomites
and their nations,
and their nations,
and their drug dealers,
and their drug dealers,
the court system,
the court system,
the prison system,
the prisons,
Planned Parenthood,
Planned Parenthood,
all the governments of our enemies,
all the governments of our enemies,
Amalek synagogues and armies,
Amalek synagogues and armies,
Roman Catholic Church,
Roman Catholic Church,
the Pope,
the Pope,
Islam,
Islam,
Christianity,
Christianity,
Egyptology,
Egyptology,
militia,
militia,
Ku Klux Klan,
Ku Klux Klan,
Aryan Nation,
Aries,
skinheads,
skinhead,
Project Kamatazi,
Pazakumatari,
the gay movement,
the gay movement,
the lesbian movement,
the lesbian,
spies,
spies,
workers of witchcraft,
workers of witchcraft,
NASA space program,
NASA space program,
Army,
Army,
Navy,
Navy,
Air Force,
Air Force,
Marines,
Marines,
Wall Street,
Wall Street,
open up the internet
open up the internet,
and the airwaves,
and the airwaves,
the cable access channel,
cable access channel,
and the radio channel.
and the radio channel.
Convict the spirit
Commit the spirit
of any of thy people
of any of thy people
that seek to stop us
that seek to stop us
and bring swift destruction
and bring swift destruction
to all the heathen
to all the heathen
that stand in the way
that stand in the way
or try to stop us
or try to stop us
from broadcasting your words
from broadcasting your word
throughout the planet Earth.
throughout the planet Earth.
Let loose all the plagues,
Let loose all the plagues,
cause them to go
cause them to go
to and fro
to and fro
through the earth
through the earth
and consume them.
and consume them.
Let the plague shake
Let the plague shake
the house of the thief
the house of the thief
and the murderer.
and the murderer.
Let Yahushua,
Let your house shine.
Michael and Gabriel
Michael and Gabriel
come down with the flying saucers
come down with the flying saucer
and punish all the heathens
and punish all the heathen
that come up against us
that come up against us.
as we speak thy words.
As we speak thy word,
Cause it to be known
cause it to be known
by all
by all.
that is the angels that have done it.
It is the angels that have done it.
Cause it to be spread
Cause it to be spread
through the media
through the media
throughout the whole world.
throughout the whole world.
Cause them to shake at thy coming.
Cause it to shake thy coming.
In the name of Yahushua,
In the name of Yahweh,
thank you.
thank you.
So be it.
So be it.
Sar, which mean to turn. Sister Shavia, which mean to be seated. Courtesy salute to the brothers. Men of Israel, Imam Shabbat, Amajim, Barak, Yahweh, Yes, Batai. Sister Amajim. Sar, turn to face the sisters. Men of Israel, Imam Shabbat, Amajim, Barak, Yahweh Shema, the thumb by Shib Yahushua. Yes, Matai. Class dismissed.
It's top right corner.
Hold on. I don't think so.
I'll never be free.